All right, so today we're going to be doing something a little different. It's like, those class notes we all used to take back in school to help us really get a grip on a subject. We're diving into that kind of learning.
Yeah, like that organized way of getting info down. Super useful, really at the core of understanding any new material. Today, we have this unique chance to peek into the class notes of a student, Suenia, getting ready for the TOEFL TBI exam.
You got it. And we'll be looking at a few key sections. There's language usage, where it's all but the building blocks of words, literally. Then there's rating, how different texts present and argue their ideas. And then writing, where we can offer some tips on making communication super clear and effective. Oh, and we'll also touch on the bibliographic references Soenia's put together.
And running through all of this, there's this really important element for communication, especially in a formal setting like the TOEFL and just, in our world today. Politically correct language. It's all about thinking before we speak, making sure we're clear, avoiding those accidental misunderstandings, and building respectful conversation.
Okay, so let's break this down, starting with language usage. Soenia kicks off her notes with a breakdown of prefixes, which is super helpful. There's lists like disagree, disappear, disadvantage. Adding those two letters can totally flip a word's meaning.
Oh, totally. What's cool is how these prefixes are like little meaning machines.
Yeah.
It's not random. They change the base word in a systematic way. Take dis. Usually it means no or the opposite. So agree becomes disagree, appear becomes disappear. Once you see the pattern, you can decode tons of new words way faster.
She also has inim, words like impossible, imperfect, inaccessible. Often these show the opposite or a lack of something.
Exactly. And notice how it changes to im before words, starting with p or m. A tiny tweak for the sound, but knowing that helps with both spelling and how you say the word. Then there's, again, for negation, like unhappy or unbelievable.
And then ill, irresponsible, irregular, illiterate, illegal. Also, that not feeling.
Yeah, and the choice between ire and ill often depends on what letter the root word starts with. Ire before R, ill before L. Small things, but they make you more confident when you hit a word you don't know.
Right, right. Then there's for rebuild, rewrite, rebirth. Clearly, it's about doing again or making new. And coexist, collaborate, coordinate. It's about doing things together, being partners.
Oh, you see that one everywhere? And co shows how important teamwork is, especially in our globalized world, right? And we got defrost, dehydrate, deregulate. Usually it means taking something away or reversing a process.
Then it's for misunderstand, misbehave, misfortune. Something's wrong, not right.
Exactly. It often has that sense of error or a bad outcome. Then we move into prefixes about time or what's coming, like foresee, forecast, forethought.
Looking ahead, kind of. And lastly, prefixes that tell us how many. Monolingual, monochrome, monorail, and tripoly for trilingual, tripod, polysyllabic.
So useful in so many areas, from languages to science. Knowing mono means one, tri means three, and poly means many just unlocks the meaning of so many words.
So Suenia has some exercises to test herself. Let's try the first one. It's fill in the blanks with dis, in, un, and I are ill. The first sentence is, I'm sorry, but I completely agree with what you said. What do you think?
Well, with that strong completely, I'd say disagree fits best. It emphasizes that there's absolutely no agreement.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, the next one. He has become obese at every meal. We need a prefix that's about eating. Then, it's too hot in here. Why do they always christen the room? Something about making it cooler, and he's not very good. I christen his ability. So, a prefix showing lack of belief. I guess one's tricky. In exams, we need something showing it's wrong, not allowed. And lastly, cruise relevant.
All right, so he has become obese. He's porned at every meal. While overeat comes to mind, we're sticking to these prefixes. Thinking about changing the state due to eating habits, maybe indigest, though that's more about what happens after eating. Okay, it's too hot in here. Why do they always tease the room? It doesn't quite fit. But remember, defrost for removal. Maybe defrost, metaphorically, like removing heat, for he's not very good. Mere his ability.
Yeah.
Disbelieve works perfectly. No faith in his skills. Cheating a bit more in examining. I'd say illicit against the rules. And something not pertinent is irrelevant.
That breakdown is really helpful. Okay, Suenia has a matching exercise next. The words are monolingual, bicycle, polyglot, tripod, quadrilateral. And the choices are, it's a shape with 4 sides, it's got 2 wheels, a person who can speak a lot of languages, a camera stand with 3 legs, and it can be used in many ways.
Nice. This really solidifies those number prefixes. Monolingual, with mono meaning one, has to be someone who speaks only one language. Bicycle, with bi for two, is obviously it's got two wheels. Polyglot, thanks to poly for many, is a person who can speak a lot of languages. Tripod, with tri for three, goes with a camera stand with three legs. And quadrilateral, from quad meaning four, it's a shape with four sides. That last option, kind of tricky, not directly linked to the prefixes.
Exactly, a distractor. Now, the last prefix, fill in the blanks.
Mm-hmm.
We can't see the results of a merger between the two companies. You can use the microwave to the sauce spread. Jude's mom is Spanish and her dad English. She's dyslingual. I was late for work today because I slept. And my brother and I had an argument because of a keen understanding.
All right, for the first, using for, it's got to be 4C. Can't predict the future. Second one with defrost the bread. With those parents, Jude's trilingual, using tri, late because of too much sleep, overslept, and a disagreement due to not understanding each other, misunderstanding.
Nice work with those prefixes. Suenia also has notes on suffixes, things added at the end of words. She's got loveness listed, like happiness, darkness, illness. What do suffixes usually tell us?
Suffixes are often like clues about a word's job in a sentence. Is it a noun, verb, adjective, adverb, or they add a specific flavor to the meaning? For example, pulpiness usually turns an adjective into a noun, like happy becoming happiness, talking about the state of being happy.
She's got disshiphoodment, too, like friendship, partnership, childhood, brotherhood, development, disappointment.
Those often show a state, condition, or a link between things. Aip can be a connection or being together, ahood often a period of life or a group, and aitment often a process or what comes out of it.
And then ain'tsen, examples like performance, independence, jealousy, urgency, explanation. And ain'tsem with kingdom, martyrdom, boredom.
These make nouns, yeah. Ants and instance usually come from verbs, showing an action or state. Antsy can be a quality or condition. Antsem often means a realm, a state of being.
She's got a huge list for suffixes that show someone's role. Heir, bodyist, insistian, servantist, and superintendent, with examples like employer, actor, employee, artist, historian, servant.
Right, those are key for figuring out jobs or roles. The little differences can be interesting, like employer and employee, both about work, but the suffix tells you who's giving the work and who's doing it.
Then we have decidention, like conversion, creation, and in city, like urgency, capacity. And nationality suffixes like Italian, Swedish, Chinese.
Yeah, antecedent and indecision are super common for making verbs into nouns. Antecedent and indecity often indicate a state or quality. And the nationality ones are, well, obviously important for saying where someone's from.
And suffixes for qualities. Yish, like noisy, yellowish. And ensless, meaning hopeless, careless.
Yeah.
And ansel, like cultural, natural, historical.
E can add that feeling of being like something or having a certain quality. Ish is often like a resemblance or little bit of that quality. Suffless means without, straightforward. Al often makes nouns into adjectives, showing connection or characteristic.
We see verb suffixes. It's Sifian in modernize, clarify, shorten. And finally, that adverb suffix, facility, like easily, carefully.
Those verb ones are about making something a certain way or doing an action. Nasally, that's our classic adverb maker telling us how things are done.
So suffix exercises too. First, fill in the blanks with hismus. He had a serious ill when he was a child. He always had a good explan for everything he did. He was always ready to help when the family was facing hard.
Easy peasy. Illness, explanation, and hardness. They all turn adjectives or verbs into nouns, telling us about a state or quality.
Next up, matching nationality suffixes with countries. Italy, Sweden, Japan, England, for example.
Okay, Italy becomes Italian, Sweden is Swedish, Japan is Japanese, and England gives us English.
Third exercise, using cactable and slow. He was always a care. Man who did everything correctly. He was always of hope, even in difficult times. And that movie was completely of meaning.
First one, careful, full of care. Second, hopeful, full of hope. And third, meaningless without meaning.
Sentence completion now, using words like careless, childhood, pleasant, and careful. Simon is a child. He keeps losing things, and his notebooks are a real mess. When I think of lots of memories come to my mind. It was the best period of my life.
Sounds like Simon's careless. And for the second, childhood, and then pleasant memories, that paints a nice picture.
The last one, making new words.
He has a lot of power. He plays very well. He's a very good...
Yeah.
Beer has got alcohol in it. It's some drink.
Okay, someone with lots of power is powerful. A good player is a player. And a drink with alcohol is an alcoholic drink.
So how does all this deep prefix and suffix stuff link to politically correct communication, which we talked about earlier? It's super connected. When we're trying to be respectful and inclusive, choosing the right words is crucial. Understanding these word parts lets us pick words more accurately so we don't accidentally use language that's offensive or has the wrong meaning. For example, those suffix nuances can help us get the difference between person-first and identity-first language, like when talking about disabilities, even if the notes don't cover that specifically. It's about being aware of how our words can affect others, right down to the building blocks.
Makes total sense. Okay, let's move to the reading section. First passage. A gender gap at Harvard.
Ugh.
What are the big arguments here?
The main thing is the changing demographics in higher ed. The article talks about the increasing number of women applying to and attending college nationwide and asks, could this eventually affect even super selective places like Harvard, which right now has an equal gender balance?
And what's the counter-argument then?
Well, the counterpoint is that Harvard, because it's so selective, can maintain that balance for now. They have so many qualified applicants of both genders that they haven't seen the imbalances that other colleges have, where way more women are enrolled than men. But the article hints that even Harvard might not be able to avoid these national trends forever, especially with that growing gap in how many women are applying compared to men.
They do bring up some interesting stats.
Definitely. Like 60% of college students across the U.S. are now women, and there were 35% more women applying than men in the last cycle. It also mentions Richard V. Reeves, who says this gender gap in education actually starts way earlier. And those examples, Baylor and UCLA with more women than men, Vassar and Pitts are getting double the female applicants, it shows it's a widespread trend.
What are some of the conclusions or ethical points they raise?
Well, they ask, is it okay for these very selective schools to quietly favor men to keep the gender balance? They also say that even with more women in college, it doesn't mean men don't still have advantages in other areas of society. And they suggest that maybe men and women need different things from college, pointing to things like fewer men studying abroad or being involved in student government.
The second reading is, don't back the bias. Women's sports are here to stay. This seems to be about, women's athletics getting more attention.
It is for sure. The main point is that women's sports, especially basketball, are becoming way more popular and getting more media coverage, which means they're here to stay, even though there's still some bias against them.
How is it different from before?
Well, historically, women's sports have gotten almost no media attention. The article says that in 2016, all women's sports combined only got 4% of all sports media coverage. Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's wild. So what's changed?
They talk about how the Iowa versus South Carolina basketball game had a record-breaking 24 million viewers, which is huge. And they tell a story about how some big NBA players were saying how exciting women's college basketball is, which shows things are changing culturally.
But they also talk about the problems that still exist, right?
Yeah, they bring up that LA Times article, which was a mess, as a reminder that sexism and bias are still alive and well in how women's sports are covered. They stress that media outlets have to be held accountable for representing things fairly and respectfully. They also give credit to players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese for bringing so much excitement to the game and driving up interest.
Okay, the last reading is, MIT census data shows that most work is new work, long-term study of U.S. Looks like it's about jobs changing over time.
Yep, the main takeaway is that most jobs in the U.S. today are in occupations that literally didn't exist in 1940. Technology and what people want to buy have been the big drivers.
And have the types of new jobs stayed the same over that time?
Not at all. The study says there are two clear phases. From 1940 to 1980, there was big growth in mid-skill jobs, especially in manufacturing and office work. But in the last 40 years, things have split. Growth is mostly in high-paying professional and technical fields and low-wage service jobs. They also suggest that since 1980, technology has actually gotten rid of more jobs than it's created.
That example about the Wright brothers is a great way to show this.
Totally. Their census category changed from bicycle merchants to airplane inventors, perfectly showing how whole new types of jobs pop up. The article also lists a bunch of new job titles, from engineers of computer applications to solar photovoltaic electricians, even tattooers and hypnotherapists. Shows how much our economy has changed, right? Oh, and they found that people with more education are more likely to be working in these new occupations.
So how do these readings connect to that politically correct communication we've been talking about?
Each one gives us a different angle. The gender gap article highlights those discussions about fair representation and the hidden biases that can shape how we think and talk. The women's sports one tackles biased language in the media head-on and says we need to be respectful and accurate when we talk about groups that haven't always been represented well. And the job study shows how language changes with society and tech, meaning we have to adapt our vocab and understanding so we can describe different jobs and roles accurately and respectfully. Reminds us that language isn't static, it's always evolving with the world.
Okay, let's shift gears to the writing section. We'll give some feedback on Suenia's first drafts. The first prompt asks, in a world where human rights laws have upheld gender equality for over 5 decades, why does the conversation about gender inequality and disparities in opportunities remain necessary? Suenia's first try was, this problem has been going on for such a long time, why haven't we found a solution for it? Lack political interest, lack societal cohesion, patriarchy. What are your initial thoughts?
Okay, so Suenia has definitely identified some potential reasons, but the way it's written is too casual and not developed enough for a formal test like the TOEFL. Starting with a question isn't as strong as a clear statement in academic writing. The bullet points are a start, but they need more explanation and support to make a strong argument.
What could she do to improve this response?
First, rephrase that opening as a statement that directly answers the prompt. Instead of asking why we need the conversation, she should say what she thinks, maybe acknowledging the laws for gender equality, but arguing that we still need to talk because there's still inequality. Second, expand on those bullet points, like what exactly about the lack of political interest is holding things back? How does the lack of societal cohesion make things worse? And how does patriarchy still exist even with those laws? Giving examples and explaining the connections would make her argument way stronger. And using more formal language would help too.
The second writing prompt says, raising a child in today's world requires a delicate balance of guidance, resilience, empowerment, and courage to challenge cultural norms. As a diligent mom, you play a pivotal role in shaping your daughter's values, confidence, and sense of purpose in a society that still presents challenges for women. Suenia wrote, I tried to provide her with opportunities to develop herself in the best way possible. Exogenous influences. I understood that this kind of approach was a good one to raise her, because she is more free autonomous. She has her own opinions about everything. She has the perception of social problems all around the world, in the whole world. What feedback would you give?
Okay, she's showing a personal connection to the topic, which is good, but it needs a lot of work in terms of being clear, specific, and sounding more formal. That misspelling of develop needs fixing. Exogenous influences is a bit vague without examples. It would be helpful to know what specific things she encountered and how she dealt with them. Because she is more free autonomous is a bit informal and doesn't really explain how it relates to her parenting. She has her own opinions about everything, is kind of general. Giving examples of those opinions or how she encouraged her daughter to think for herself would be better. She became is incomplete, we need the rest of the sentence. And that last bit, she has the perception of social problems all around the world, in the whole world, is repetitive. Focus on specific issues she's aware of and how her upbringing helped with that.
So, what are the main things she should work on in this response?
More specific examples to back up her points. Instead of saying she gave her opportunities, describe what those were and why they were good. When she says exogenous influences, give actual examples and how she handled them. Explain more clearly and formally how her approach led to her daughter being free autonomous. Finish that sentence. She became a Huffle. And instead of saying social problems all around the world, talk about specific problems her daughter understands and how her upbringing contributed to that. She should also try to directly address those ideas from the prompt, guidance, resilience, empowerment, challenging cultural norms in her rewrite.
It seems like in both writing prompts, making a clear argument, supporting it well, and using precise language are key.
Totally.
Oh.
Whether it's about big issues or personal stuff, being able to explain your thoughts well, using evidence, and getting the language right is super important, especially for a test like the TOEFL.
To wrap things up, let's quickly look at the bibliographic references Suenia included.
Right. These give us ways to learn more about what we talked about. Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is essential for understanding inclusive language and disability rights, which is a huge part of politically correct communication. Sustainable Development Goals from the UNDP, those lay out a global plan for tackling inequality, social justice, human rights, all connected to using language thoughtfully. Grammar Unit 128, prefixes, and Grammar Unit 129. Suffixes, well, those are super relevant for building vocab and using precise language, like we saw. The Harvard Crimson article gives a real-life example of that gender balance issue in higher ed, tying into those broader conversations about fairness and representation. And lastly, Decreto N 19.841-1945 que promulga a Carta das Nações Unidas, the decree enacting the UN Charter in Brazil. It's a historically important text that shows the world's commitment to human rights and working together, giving us context for talking about respectful communication across cultures.
They really do offer a great starting point for further learning.
For sure. They're not just for citing, they're for really understanding the complexities of communicating well and responsibly in our world today.
So as we finish up this deep dive, it's clear that paying attention to language and context is so important, especially when prepping for tests like the TOEFL and talking to people from different cultures.
Absolutely. Keep learning, practice. Think about the little things in language. That's how you become a communicator who's clear, effective, and respectful.
On that note, here's something to think about. As you learn new things and encounter different views, how will you use your understanding of language to make sure your communication is accurate? A&D helps create a more inclusive and understanding world. It's a question worth pondering as you keep learning.